You're listening to a podcast from thespoilist.com.
Hello and welcome to a brand new season of First Contact, the Next Generation Introcast, where three people chat about TNG and say mean things. I'm Torag.
I'm John.
And I'm Alex.
This week we're talking about TNG's Season 2 premiere, The Child. It was written by Jaron Summers, John Poville and Maurice Hurley. It first aired the week of the 21st of November 1988. John, what happens in this one?
The Enterprise is on its way to transport specimens of a plasma plague to a research facility when Councillor Troy mysteriously becomes pregnant after a shiny light sparkles into her bed.
Wait. What's going on?
Well, I'm trying to read the episode synopsis.
Yeah, I know that. But where have Andrew and James gone?
Well, they left.
Shouldn't someone have mentioned something? I mean, it seems weird to start without even acknowledging it.
Look, it's the start of a new season. Anything can happen. We got new jingles, cast members can change jobs or even disappear completely. It's a new dynamic, so it's best to just go with it. I'm sure something has changed with you too.
Well, I have got a beard now. She just doesn't like to be around when I do these podcasts. Oh, and I've got this facial hair. It just made everything else seem better. Where did Andrew and James go anyway?
Well, they got an offer they just couldn't refuse.
And there are tailbacks on the A20 London Road after drivers reported suffering abuse from a giant tar slick. More traffic and travel in 30.
Andrew and James in the morning, turning the hits table in Whitstable FM. Thank you very much, James. Time check, 7:07 in the AM. At the top of the hour, you were listening to Alicia's Attic with I Feel, perhaps one of the great forgotten tunes of the 1990s. And what a decade that was. We'll have plenty more top hits coming up in the next hour with everyone from EMF, Deep Blue Something and Shakespeare's Sister. But for now, I'm asking for your contribution in Hot Topic Tuesday. Hot Topic Tuesday. Today I'm going to be asking one of the big questions of our time. It's a breakfast show, so I'm asking you a breakfast question. It's about what you like to put in your mouth in the morning. We all enjoy a little bit of oral pleasure to get us going, don't we? There's no right or wrong answer, but I'm hoping there's a definitive one. We want to know, what do you like on your toast? So, James, what have the good people of Whitstable been saying?
Well, Gene texted to say he likes his toast like he likes his women. Light brown, silent, and covered in butter. We have a tweet from Data1701 asking, what does it actually mean to eat toast? Gates said she can't afford toast anymore since she was inexplicably fired. While Will says he makes his own jam every morning and spreads it over everything.
That sounds delicious. Great suggestions, everyone. Keep them coming in. Now it's time for a call.
We have Alex on line 1.
Hi there, Alex. What do you like on your toast?
Well, egg, but that's beside the point. Look, can you come back to First Contact, please? There's new people here, and I don't like change.
Haha, you seem to have gone a little off topic there, mate.
Well, just stop this self-indulgent and get on with the show. Nobody cares whatever the weak point you're making is. They just want to hear some about some old TV show. So let's just cut the crap and start talking about Star Trek.
Cyberspace, the new frontier. These are the voyages of the podcast First Contact. Its mission? to explore every episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, to seek out new viewers and have new conversations, to boldly view what many have viewed before. Thank you very much to John and Torag from the Movieing On podcast. You can hear more of them over at scicon.net. Welcome once again to First Contact. We are back, and no, it was not court mandated. I'm Andrew.
I'm James.
And remarkably, I'm still here.
As we know, this week's episode is The Child. James, what actually happens in this one?
The Enterprise is on its way to transport specimens of a plasma plague to a research facility when Lieutenant Councillor Troi, mysteriously becomes pregnant after a Christmas light sparkles into her bed. Before anyone can scream space rape, Troi declares she wants to keep the baby, which is growing at an incredible rate. She gives birth and the child grows into a boy, and makes little impact before eventually dying because it's endangering the plague containment fields with its freaky radiation. Meanwhile, try not to pay too much attention to the format and personnel changes.
I suppose you could say that the end of season 1, the show wasn't quite finding its feet, but it certainly looked down and realised that it was a biped, so we have a momentum, but along comes the writer's strike. This was meant to be the second part of a trilogy, and that would have followed up on the story of the destroyed bases and introduced a new enemy. Instead, we have The Child, which is a rehashed script from Star Trek's abandoned Phase 2 project. So, Alex, what did you think of this one?
Well, I think, after you've had a first series that can be a bit up and down, it's had its good points, but it's had some really quite depressing lows. It does well to build upon that, and then when you're building upon it, then also make any changes you need, maybe shake the cast up a bit, shake some of the settings up, really expand on it. So I'd like to know why this episode did the second half of that, but then used a terrible story, just like all the ones that went before.
It does feel confident, I think, in a practical level. You start with a really nice shot of the Enterprise, and then you've got a nice model shot of a shuttle. That's great. Riker has a beard, Wesley has a new outfit, all very exciting things. And you think,
I'm sorry, Wesley with a new outfit, all very exciting things.
Yeah, the wood panelling has gone on the bridge, replaced by sort of cushions with flashing lights on. I love that kind of thing. It looks better. I think the lighting's better. All that stuff. But then you have an original series plot, which is just...
It is very original series, you're right. With all of the lack of awareness of issues that would go with that.
I think we have to address this head on, because you have this fairy light that sparkles, it goes all around the ship, highlights a man's lovely fluffy hairy chest for a while, and then it enters Councillor Troi, goes under her bed sheets, and a presence enters her. I think that's how she put it. So, I don't feel that they adequately dealt with the ramifications of this, really. Everybody seems sort of okay with this.
Yeah, really, no one seemed willing to turn around and say, you have been raped by Tinkerbell.
No, nobody seems to be willing to say that, nor are they willing to say, hey, Councillor Troi, you're under an alien influence, when she's saying, I am having this baby. It's all very, well, she's having a baby, that's fine, that's her choice, and yes, it is her choice.
But I am surprised by how casually they do talk about abortion. I mean, that seems a bit ahead of its time, almost. To its credit.
Then they had Worf be the character who said it, almost as if they're pushing it over to that character who may care less because he's a Klingon. Yeah. Oh, they're a bit savage, aren't they? Racism.
You're using the excuse that it's an original series story, but is it really taken exactly from the original series? I think it's only an outline it was based on, so the script itself is new.
The script is written for Series 2, but what we mean is it's like something from the original series. It's the kind of story you'd get.
And that's not to say that they couldn't address this particular story in an interesting way, using science fiction to actually address issues. And if you did want it to be maybe an episode about rape, you could do that within a science fiction framework, rather than just suggesting there were gangs who were into that. If you wanted it to be an episode about being a single parent, do that in a science fiction framework. If you wanted to do an episode about abortion, you can do that in a science fiction framework. But what this does is takes a concept and I think does absolutely nothing with it. Everyone is incredibly passive. It's as if they just decide, well, weird stuff happens in space and let's just go with it.
I think the rape element of this episode, and there's a phrase that we didn't expect we'd be saying, it's sort of the first part, and then as soon as she gives birth, it becomes something else ridiculous entirely. But let's just deal with that first half for a minute. And I mean, a lot of that's confined to just that scene in the meeting room, and no one seems particularly bothered about the fact that this is all very odd. And, you know, I get the thing that you have Troy saying that she wants to carry it to term and Picard saying, well, if that's your choice, then we'll stick with it. But there's really no discussion of the issue. And considering all of the irregularities with the pregnancy, you would think that, as you say, there is more room to discuss these ideas than is actually given over to it.
But I do love that scene for one reason only, and that's Riker's reaction. Baby, this is a surprise. Who's the father? You could tell how worried that Riker was in that scene.
And we should say, as much as we, joking about this, the element of rape here really isn't a joking matter. And equally, nor is it something that should be brushed over so lightly, which I think is the issue that we're having here. That is quite an important story element, and it's just not dealt with. I mean, there's barely any discussion of the fact that, that element aside, that this could be a threat to the ship.
That is the very thing. She's just walking around, she's fine to come on the bridge, and you think, well, has she been taken over in some way? Is she being influenced? Fine, the doctor says, oh, as far as I can tell, it's a perfectly normal baby. Well, it's not, because, it's come to term within a day. And I don't know, does Councillor Troy seem a little bit, maybe, too protective of it? And even later on, when it's been born, there's no sense of trying to communicate to the alien, you have done a wrong thing, this is not how we treat people. It just really doesn't hit those notes. And I would say in a troubling way, in the fact that it hasn't even entered anyone in the production staff's mind to ask some of these questions.
Well, to be fair, did it enter any of the production team's minds when they cast all the aliens as with black people? Did any of the production team go, hang on a minute, something a bit funny's going on here? So the fact that they've overlooked this, I'm not surprised.
I mean, it's one of those things, isn't it? Are we judging it by the standards of today rather than the standards of the day? Although it's not really that long ago, let's be perfectly honest. I think there's probably some truth to that through the production, it didn't really occur that perhaps this was slightly dodgy ground. There really isn't a great deal of concern for Troy's well-being. And God knows we've been guilty of not having any concern for Troy's well-being. You have Picard supporting when she makes her decision. But there really isn't anyone, as you say, saying, well, this isn't normal. Are you sure you're making the right choice? Anything along those lines.
Just to have it addressed. And even in the birth scene, where Pulaski says, we don't need armed guards in the delivery room, and you think, yes, you do. In this particular instance, you absolutely do.
It's hard to even get worked up about in many ways, because it's just so misjudged that all you can do is say, well, that was silly.
It's hard to engage because they don't engage with it. It's basically, this happens, once it's born, forget about all that, move on. I don't think there's much we can say to address it other than the whole concept is highly flawed.
And to be honest, it's one of those subjects that perhaps we should close the door on now anyway, because I don't know about the two of you, I feel somewhat uncomfortable discussing it, and I resent the fact that the show has brought it up so that we have to discuss it in this slightly awkward manner.
Well, let's look at Maurice Hurley's reaction to what eventually was turned out. The child suffered from being the first episode of the second season more than anything else.
You know, you can't do a good first episode of a season. It's just not possible.
No. And I mean, I think that was why, when Matt Smith took over as Doctor Who, the 11th Hour was such a failure.
Or you could look to the opening second Doctor story, The Power of the Daleks, one of the fan favourite stories. You could look to the opening of the second season of Enterprise, which is Shockwave Part 2, which is a great episode. You could look to the opening of the second season of Deep Space Nine, which is a 3-parter, I seem to remember, which was very good.
The opening to the third series of Red Dwarf, Backwards. I mean, that was terrible. I mean, it's why it always ranks so low in fan polls.
But the first episode of the second series of Red Dwarf was Crichton.
A 6 series of Red Dwarf, Sirens. Nobody likes that one. But yeah, the problem with the episode was it's the first one in season 2. The head writer said so. So I think we've just got to all concur with him on that.
Yes, I'm sure everyone agrees with him, apart from Gates McFadden.
They had earmarked another Phase 2 script as one that they could reuse in Next Generation, which is Devil's Due, which we may see a Next Generation episode named Devil's Due sometime way into the future. You never know.
I mean, I don't know how the two of you feel about it, but I kind of feel at the end of Series 1, starting Series 2, they shouldn't be using Phase 2 ideas.
The only reason is that it was the writer's strike. It delayed production significantly. It affected the last couple of episodes of the previous series, and it ran for quite a long time. So this season is actually 4 episodes shorter than the one before.
It's 5 episodes shorter. The 22nd episode does not count.
So if the child is the A plot, then the B plot is the plasma plague. The what now? So we're in space, so we have to add a slightly futury sounding word onto a plague. Fine, okay, it's a plasma plague. It gives Geordi something to do, that's always nice, and he's got his new job and shiny new uniform. Great. But you can see the cogs of the plot struggling to rotate within the machine of bad writing. The only time that radiation from the child poses a threat to the ship is when these plague containment fields are on board. Surely they could have come up with another part of the ship that might have been threatened by radiation, because they have basically just manufactured this entire danger scenario.
Oh no, the warp drive is exploding. There seems to be some sort of radiation on board ship.
And you know what? I'd have been willing to give it more of a pass if it weren't for the fact that it doesn't really make any sense for it to be on the Enterprise. You know, if it was just a plot device, I might have shrugged it off as so many other plot devices in the first series. But I have an issue with the particular plot device. It's transporting plagues for medical research to make vaccines. Fair enough. Why is it being done on the Enterprise? The Enterprise, as we've had established, is a ship that, as well as all the military personnel, has families on board, lots of children.
And puppies.
And puppies. If that's the case, why would you choose that ship, your flagship ship as well, to transport so many deadly diseases that would wipe out everyone if they got loose?
And surely, I don't live in the 24th century, but I'm fairly certain we've seen containment fields and stasis tubes and cryopods, stuff that contains stuff so it almost doesn't exist. Does that not exist here? We have Geordi designing some special beehive to store them all in?
Geordi points at the metal frame and says, "It can't break through this."
It's just like, it's just a frame. Nothing's between it. You know, there's big gaps in that frame, Geordi. What's your problem? Are you blind? So essentially what we're saying is we've got an A plot and a B plot, and although they do come together, it's in perhaps the least competent, least satisfying way possible. But, you know, first episode of the season, yeah?
Well, and where the plots come together, this is now the perfect time to discuss the second half of the plot with the Immaculate Conception, which is when the child's born, and as the child is rapidly getting older. Again, why is no one caring? They keep coming back and, oh well, I'll just check on how the child is doing. But why is he not under constant supervision? Why is he let loose around the ship with Troy? Why is he not in sickbay being monitored rather than being sent out to play with some puppies?
I just want to know, why is there a puppy room on the Enterprise? What do they do with these puppies?
That's actually one of my notes. The Enterprise has a puppy room. They thought of everything.
Well, I mean, are you familiar with the concept of Japanese cat cafes? They're just opening one in London, Lady Dina's Cat Cafe. You go in, you pay your money, you sterilise your hands, you get a tea and coffee, a bit of cake, and you stroke some cats.
Right, but what do you do with the puppies? I mean, you can't take them for walks. You can't take them down to planets, presumably. Are they just in that box, or do you just incinerate them once they stop being puppies? Are there full-grown dogs on the Enterprise as well? I've never seen them roaming the corridors. What are the practicalities of having puppies on a starship?
The puppy incineration room.
How is it that the ship is being powered when you're using all of the power for the replicator? Oh, we're just burning those puppies. What's that? Yeah, stick Rover on the fire.
If you have any complaints about this podcast, keep them to yourself.
So, we've talked about the A plot, we've talked about the B plot, but there's actually a C plot, which is about Wesley, and is actually the most interesting plot of the episode. And it's about Wesley. Wesley choosing whether he will stay on board or go with his mother. That is the most interesting part of this episode.
Why did she leave without him in the first place? It seems very harsh of her. You just stay on the starship, Wesley. I'm off to Starfleet Medical. You know, it can take several months or several minutes to get to Earth, depending on which episode we're in. But I'm away to be head of Starfleet. You stay here. You get your nice new uniform and your new badge, which is different from everybody else's. And I'm away. But, yeah, some interesting character moments. Wesley did disappear towards the end of the last season. I'm not quite sure why, after he actually seemed to be quite interesting and coming of age. I really like the awkward turbo lift scene. That seems like something that would happen in real life. Just Wesley standing with Captain Picard, nobody saying anything.
Wesley, Captain Picard? Captain, shut up, Wesley. So just getting back to the child growing up. Aside from the fact that no one seems to be interested, did either of you find the whole idea of he's not yet old enough to explain why he's come here to be a bit weird?
It's almost as if we don't really want to deal with this, so let's just write in a line of dialogue so we don't have to explain too much, the alien doesn't have to explain too much. Yeah, that, and actually, moving towards the end of the episode, it all feels very much, it's a rush to the end, let's get everything back to where it was when we started.
And really, at the end, none of it's really explained. Let's be perfectly honest. You have Troy's summation as far as she can guess. But it's never actually said to her. All she gets is her son saying, oh, yeah, it's me that's causing all of the problems. Bye! But he never says why, she just assumes.
Yeah, and again, couldn't we have put him in a force field of some kind? I don't really understand this radiation. We could put him in a lead box. I mean, we have technology to block radiation now.
No, this is a special space radiation.
Oh, man, it's the radiation that has any property you need it to have in the episode. I'd forgotten about that.
And what has he ultimately learned at the end of this? He's grown to the age of, 8? He's learnt what it's like to play with some puppies. He's learnt what dinner is. And he's learnt what it feels like when you burn your finger.
It's the full gamut of human experience.
Wesley still has only experienced 2 of those 3.
Ah, those are the games. Well, I don't know about you, but dinner and puppies are a big part of my life, especially when you combine the two.
I don't have anything else to say about this. I'm just, we've come back, we've had a bit of a break, thought we'd be enthusiastic starting a new season, but I feel like I've been beaten over the head by stupid.
Well, you might have more of a reason to think this should have been better, because there's actually on TV Tropes, there's a trope named after Season 2 of Next Generation, and that's growing the beard. It's meant to be the point at which a show stops being rubbish and starts being really good, named after Riker growing the beard. So The Child is meant to be the first episode of this new Next Generation, where it's really brilliant. And it's actually a load of crap.
Well, that's ruined our day, but let's share our random thoughts about this episode in Quickfire.
Quickfire.
We've mentioned Phase 2 a couple of times throughout this episode. In case you don't know what that is, it was a proposed second Star Trek series which would have reunited the original cast on a new 5-year mission. Everyone had agreed to return except for Leonard Nimoy, who had some issues with Gene Roddenberry. It exists now as a legend, but it actually got pretty far into development, with cast deals signed and sets built, and test footage actually shot. 13 scripts were commissioned and written, hence why they are able to go back and read the outlines for this episode, The Child. It was going to be the flagship show on the new Paramount television network, a forerunner of UPN, but that idea folded at the time, and Paramount saw with the success of Star Wars and Close Encounters of the Third Kind that science fiction could be popular, so they decided to remake the pilot in that image as the motion picture.
It's a miraculous birth. A child that's come to term far before it should have. It came from a star and is now born to a human woman. And this miracle child, I shall call him Ian.
Hey, look, it's Whoopi Goldberg, everyone. She's a famous Hollywood actress. Look, she's Whoopi Goldberg. She's behind the bar. She's wise and wears a hat.
And yet this episode contained a remarkably small amount of making whoopee.
But I do like Garnon's line to Wesley, "No, I never knew the captain till he came on board." Maybe you should remember that line, Alex. Maybe you should remember it. She never knew. She's never met the captain. Never. Not even if it was hundreds of years ago. She's never met him.
Diane Muldaur joins the cast as Dr. Catherine Pulaski. Star Trek fans might know her from her appearances in the original series, playing two different characters in Return to Tomorrow and Is There in Truth No Beauty. She isn't actually a series regular, but does appear as a special guest star and seems to be the regular Doctor. Wonder how that works out. Maybe we'll talk about it more next week.
Tasha hasn't had a line yet.
Where was Tasha? She wasn't in this episode.
She was probably in the background somewhere. Probably in the puppy room.
Okay, so you've built a new set. It's a bar where the crew can socially interact. That's great. I'm sure we'll see it lots throughout the show, but is the best use of it a medical consultation? Does it give us a great impression of the new Doctor if she is with the pregnant woman in the bar? Why should that scene take place there, other than the fact you want to show it off? That's just dumb.
Everyone's very concerned about these plasma plagues and whatnot, and yet no one seems to be concerned about the disgruntled DJ from North Norfolk Digital that's down in engineering. I mean, I thought it was a very odd prequel to Alpha Papa, to be honest. I always got the sense that Pat had risen up through the ranks through Radio Norwich, not that he'd spent his time out in deep space. But it does add a whole new spin on Alpha Papa.
Colm Meaney, his appearance here, and he was also in Encounter at Farpoint. Do you remember that?
Maybe he'll be back again. Well, season 2 got off to a start, but there's plenty more to go, and we're looking forward to coming back. We're not regretting this already, not even one bit. But for now, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. No dogs were harmed in the making of this podcast. But we did punch a cat in the face and throw a budgerigar in a shudder.